Joining me now to discuss this in the studio is the historian Lawrence Goldman. Lawrence, welcome to the show. We can have a round of applause for Lawrence. He's right here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lawrence, you were booked before Tim Davie resigned because, and to explain this story, in 2022, you, with a bunch of other historians, you're a worldwide, world-renowned expert historian, and you went to the BBC and you said, hi, I think you're misrepresenting some history, some facts here, and they've kind of fobbed you off, right?
Yeah, they fobbed us off. We produced a report. We looked at programmes, broadcast between 2020 and 2022, news bulletins as well. We picked out historical errors, lack of objectivity, inaccuracy, bias and ideological slant.
Would you mind just telling us one or two examples?
Yeah, several were about the history of slavery. One was on the Bengal famine of 1943.
Blaming Winston Churchill.
Blaming Winston Churchill and accusing him of being a racist. Another, perhaps the worst of them, was on the Irish famine of the late 1840s. And in all these cases, there were distortions. There was the presentation of a view in what is a contested field when there are lots of different interpretations, and there wasn't enough focus on the facts. Where slavery was concerned, for example, viewers were not told that there were other European nations involved in slave trading, and indeed that Africans themselves were always the first stage of the slave trade process. Africans enslaved Africans and then sold them to Europeans. Those kinds of facts were never explained to people.
To push forward an ideology that it's just the British who are uniquely evil.
And we were uniquely evil, and then that very remarkable aspect of our history, that we became the lead nation in the history of anti-slavery, in suppressing and ending the slave trade, and indeed ending slavery all over the 19th century world. That was left out
at a great cost financially and also of life.
Yes, it's estimated that something like 1,600 sailors in the Royal Navy died in the process of manning the West African squadron and patrolling the Atlantic and trying to end the trade in slaves. And the cost, well, it ran to millions even in the 19th century. The West African squadron was at sea from about 1810, 1811, all the way through to the 1860s.
That's like billions now. That's like a couple of Chagos Islands.
Absolutely. It was a great act of kind of, humanitarian concern. Similarly, I mean, one could go on with the way the BBC presented it. We then attempted, in various ways, to end slave trading among African nations, and indeed also to end human sacrifice. And they presented that in a very mealy-mouthed kind of way. There are certain events in Benin and other places which they mangled, whether deliberately or not.
So, OK, so these are some examples here. You went to the BBC, you said, hey, we're pretty world expert-y on all this stuff. And you presented this information in a very sort of polite manner. Now, this is where the problem comes in, because organisations make mistakes. Also, organisations have arguably, biases as well, of course. But their response, that seems to be the problem. This is 2022. You went to them, you said, guys, maybe you should have a look at this because you're not doing your job properly. Let's talk about their response.
Yes, well, if I may just explain, Michael Prescott, in that dossier that has been leaked, actually said we made very sensible and reasonable and moderate points. We didn't scream at them, we didn't shout. We said, look, there are factual errors here in the way that you're presenting British history. You can do better. And we suggested ways in which they might do it better. But they fobbed us off.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private internet access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Apparently there was some plan that they might meet, one BBC employee might meet with us to discuss it, but then they changed their mind and we never had that discussion. And we put forward some ideas. We suggested that there might be a broad panel of historians who could be contacted when they were making programmes and asked for their opinions. And we weren't trying to impose one ideological line. We simply wanted them to use the best people. And that, I think, is our most important point from 2022. We said, you're not using the best people. You're not going to the experts. You're not dealing with people who spent a lifetime in academic research actually dealing with these problems and these questions. There are better people. And I would say this, in the old days, the BBC actually did find who those people were and worked with them. More recently, it seems to me, in the presentation of history and in other subjects, they've tended to go to people whose line on a question they would approve of, they could rely on. And so the viewer, the millions of viewers, are not actually getting the best. And that surely was what the BBC should have represented, the best.
Absolutely, of course, a meritocracy. Yeah. That's why I got this job. So, so then they kind of fobbed you off, and then I'm assuming they've made further historical inaccuracies that could have been.
We did that particular thing. History Reclaimed runs a big website, and we tried to correct some of the mistakes that are made, not just by the BBC, but by other historians and other media outlets. And we tried to present history as it should be presented, and we have lots of eminent historians writing for us because there is a great concern in the historical profession that people are not being fed the truth. So we didn't spend all our time pursuing the BBC. We kind of gave it up as a bad business. And then the Prescott report was leaked last week. And how exciting for us, and for the young man who actually compiled that report for us, that actually we had made an impact. A page of the 19 is about the way history has been presented.
That's a great point, because we're talking here, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of focus on the President Trump. Now, I would call it a lie. Yeah. Some people would call it a mistake. But also of trans issues, also on Gaza, Israel. But this particular topic just proves how ideology went deeper than that, even to history, yes. And I imagine into other academic subjects as well.
Well, I think history is very important in all of this, because...
Well, you would.
Yeah, well, yes, but he who controls the past controls the future, as Orwell said. It's very important that, if you can present history in a particular kind of way, if you can trash Winston Churchill's reputation, if you can call him a racist, if you can blame the British for the Bengal famine and the Irish famine, then, in a sense, you're involved in really quite a sinister ideological position and plot to undermine this country and its culture. It's a very serious matter. So history has to be kept clean and decent and honest. And that's what a number of historians have been trying to do. But I don't think the BBC has been as committed to that as it should be. And I would just say this. go back 20 or 25 years, and actually historians were really very complimentary about the way the BBC dealt with national history. Interestingly enough, in 2000, or 2004 it was, Winston Churchill, on a BBC poll, was voted the greatest Briton of all time. But it's in the past 20 years, perhaps even the past 10 years, that things have gone very wrong. And for myself, I think it's about the way the BBC has hired staff and the kinds of people who are now making programmes and working in the newsroom.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see if it can be fixed with just these two resignations. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the historian, Professor Lawrence Goldman. Ooh, they like you, Lawrence. So, you are watching Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. As a reminder, here is that breaking news tonight from the BBC. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has announced his resignation this evening amid allegations of bias at the corporation. In a statement, Davie says, "There have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility." The move comes following a torrid week for Britain's national broadcaster after it was accused of airing a doctored clip of a speech by President Trump and failing in its coverage of Gaza and trans issues, and as we just found out, history issues. Deborah Turnus, the broadcaster's CEO of News, has also resigned. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy said, "I want to thank Tim Davie for his service to public broadcasting over many years. He has led the BBC through a period of significant change and helped the organisation to grip the challenges it has faced in recent years." Kemi Badenoch said Tim Davie and Deborah Turnus had finally taken responsibility, but that a catalogue of serious failures at the BBC runs far deeper.